So, usually when a sequel comes out for a TV movie, the original's great, while the new one just messes up the entire movie. However, this sequel, that's just not the case. It simply is not. Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for the sequel to Flowers in the Attic, the highly anticipated sequel that, I was really looking forward to, Petals on the Wind. And as I said, I was really, really looking forward to this sequel, because, guys, I loved Flowers in the Attic. You know why I loved it so much, guys? Because Flowers in the Attic is the type of movie that sort of changed, the way I think about Lifetime movies, you know. It wasn't cheesy like the other Lifetime movies. It wasn't cheesy. It was pretty dark. It had some good it actually had some pretty good acting, and I overall really enjoyed Flowers in the Attic. I rewatched it last night, and I really enjoyed it because they showed it before Petals on the Wind. When I heard about Petals on the Wind, I'm like, this just looks so much better, because I just had this feeling it was going to be so much better, and as a result, that's the case. Petals on the Wind is 10 times better than Flowers in the Attic. If you guys did not like Flowers in the Attic for some reason, this is the movie for you. Because this movie is just like, wow. It'll change your views on Flowers in the Attic so well. It will change your views on it. I'm going to say that right now. It's going to change your views on Flowers in the Attic. If you watch this movie, you'll enjoy it more. And I think that's fantastic, because this movie just, as I said, it changed the way I think. I love Flowers in the Attic, but this movie was just so much better. So let's talk about this one. So basically, this one takes place 10 years after the last movie. You know, we basically see in those 10 years, we see the Doppelganger siblings. They've managed to survive on their own, but basically they had to, you know, they actually were taken in by this doctor who, he brought them in. He even was their father figure. You know, he was their father figure. He was very loving towards them. And, you know, and they really needed this because, you know, they had a lot of physical and emotional abuse from both their mother and their grandmother, you know, for locking them up in an attic for 2 years. So, obviously, they needed someone who, you know, was so loving towards them. However, we find out in the beginning that that guy that was raising them has died. He's died, they're at his funeral, and it's really sad because it seems, you can definitely tell they had a very strong relationship with this guy, really strong bond with this guy. So it's almost like the first movie is coming back to haunt them. That's basically what's going on, and for the first half of this movie, there's basically 3 individual plots, and then for the second half of this movie, I'm not going to talk about what happens. I'll get to that in the spoilers. But let's talk about the first half of this movie. The way to do this, to talk about it, because there's so many things going on in this movie, which I actually really liked. I liked that there were, like, everybody had their own plot, is to go by character in this movie. So, you know how I normally do a movie review where I talk about, like, the plot, then the performances and things like that? I can't do that with this movie, because as I said, there are so many different plots I need to talk about, so I'm going to spoil a lot of stuff. Let's get into Cathy first, because, you know, she's our main character here. So basically, she has decided to give up her dream of, basically, she has decided to, you know, pursue her dream of becoming a big, ballet dancer, because, you know, we saw her do that in the first movie. She does that in this movie as well. And, at the same time, she's also in a very sexual relationship with her brother. I wouldn't even call it a relationship. I call it a sexual relationship because all they really do is, yes, they are brother and sister, but they do have sex a lot. So, you know, that she's in, like, a sexual relationship with him. She meets up with this guy, named, Julian, who, right away, I'm like, there is something wrong with this guy. First, he's, like, really loving towards her. But then as time goes on, he starts to get really, really abusive and everything. He's a really bad drinking problem, so obviously that's not good. And, you know, a lot of problems with this guy. We'll get to that in the spoilers, but a lot of problems with this guy going on there. So yeah, that's what Cathy has to do in this one. She's also trying to reconnect with her mother, which honestly I knew was not going to work, but, you know, she's trying to do that as well. And then Christopher, as far as Christopher goes, I really like Christopher's plot. I like the way they did this, because they changed it from the book. They changed a lot of stuff from the book in this, but honestly, in my opinion, it was for the better, because I think it worked better in this movie. Christopher is doing as much as he can to move on from Cathy, because he knows it's not going to work. She tells him, look, I'm dating this other guy, you're my brother, it's not going to work. And so what he does is, he is actually interning at medical school. You know, he wants to become a doctor, and when he's a doctor, he meets up with this girl Sarah, who Sarah is actually a loving, very sweet girl, who is the only character in this movie that really doesn't have any, like, soap opera stuff in the movie. She kind of is just, like, trapped in this movie because she has no idea what's going on with these siblings or anything. So, but she's a great character, and I really did love her character in this movie. And he's kind of doing things behind her back. You know, he's still doing all that stuff with Cathy behind her back, so obviously she doesn't know about that, but it's a pretty big thing. And then Carrie, what's happening with Carrie is she has her own little thing. She's actually in boarding school, and she is getting severely bullied by these girls at school. They even locked her in a closet, and, you know, locking her in that closet reminded her of those really bad memories of them being locked in the attic. She's terrified of a lot of things because of being locked in the attic. You know, she doesn't want to talk to, their, grandmother, of course. She doesn't want to see their mother. There's a lot of things that she's really afraid of. And basically, that is, the first part of this movie. We also see a little bit of Corinne, but I will say there's not as much Corinne in this movie as there is in the first one, which honestly is good, because Corinne is the most annoying character in this movie. Corinne is the most unlikable character in this movie. Even though she's the most unlikable character, she is fantastic in this movie. I really did love her performance in this movie. Before we get to spoilers, let's get to the acting in this movie. In my opinion, everyone improved. Everyone improved. And the thing is, they changed some of the actors and actresses for this movie, because originally in the book, they're not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be 10 years later. It's actually supposed to show what happens immediately after, what happens immediately after they leave the attic. That's what it's supposed to show. But that's not the case with this movie. It takes place 10 years after, and in my opinion, Rose Mcgeever as Cathy, she actually did I thought she did a much better job than Kiernan Shipka. Kiernan Shipka was really good, but Rose Mcgeever just blew it out of the park. She was amazing in this. I loved her in this movie. I loved her performance in this movie. She did a great job. The scenes where she's, you know, trying to decide to get out of the relationship and whatever, you know, there was a big scene with her and that guy Julian. There's also a big twist that comes up in the second half of the movie, which I will talk about. The scenes where she is also trying to reconnect with her mother is great. The second half of the movie, there's one scene in the second half of the movie. In the second half of the movie, she becomes amazing in the second half of the movie. First half of the movie, yes, she was great. But second half of the movie is when she just became so good. I loved her in the second half of the movie. Then you have Wyatt Nash as Christopher, who I also thought was great. I love Mason Dye as Christopher. He did a great job. But Wyatt Nash just was so good. He did a great job with... Actually, you could clearly see that he knew things weren't going to work with Cathy, but he wanted them to work. But at the same time, he wanted things to work with Sarah as well. And he had a very hard time completing both of them. Trying to do both of them. Also, let's get to the one that people mainly had problems with in the last movie. Heather Graham. Yes, I know people had problems with her in the first movie. I agree. Looking back, her acting was not the strongest. In this movie, I think she improved. I really do. I really think that Heather Graham improved tremendously in this movie. She had a lot more really crazy... I mean, just seeing this woman, you're like, okay, this woman is insane. Because there's a scene where Cathy calls Corinne. And she's like, hey, Mom. And she hasn't... Keep in mind, she has not spoken to her mother in like, 10 years. So she's like, hey, Mom, how are you doing? And guess what the mom does? She hangs up on her daughter. She hangs up on her daughter, and basically, also, I forgot to say, Corinne's storyline is that her mother, Olivia, is actually dying. You know, she's dying, she's not in very good shape, and she has to try to figure out what she wants to do with, her mother. Does she want to take her to, does she want to care for her? She decides that she just wants to, she doesn't give a shit about her personally, she just wants to put her in a nursing home, and all she wants to really do is, have fun with her, husband, Bart. That's all she really cares about, is just have fun with her husband, Bart. And, that's not good. And then, very, little, and then also, Will Kemp as Julian. I thought he was great. I thought he was a really good, secondary villain. Definitely a really great job. I don't know who played Carrie, but she did a fantastic job. I mean, holy shit, the girl that played Carrie blew me out of the way. She was fantastic. I loved that we got a lot more with Carrie in this movie than we did in the first one. And she did a fantastic job. I loved her storyline in this movie. I loved her character in this movie. She was great. And then Ellen Bernstein as Olivia. She actually doesn't have as much to do because most of the movie she's dying, as I said. So I still thought she did a great job. As I said, she does not have as much to do as the first movie. Alright, so now let's get to spoilers. Basically, the spoilers here, I'm going to spoil everything that happens in the second half of the movie. Because the second half of the movie is just where this movie got awesome. First half, I loved it. But second half is just where it became, this is why it's better than the sequel. I mean, the first half, yes, it was better than the sequel. But the second half, it just, they stepped it up so much in the second half of this movie. Let's just get to it. Alright, so the first thing, of course, we do have to talk about is the one thing with Carrie. So when Carrie wanted to run away from the school, to be with her sister in the city, I thought everything was going to be okay with her. But then I thought, wait a second, this is a family that's been, locked in an attic for all this time. And basically, I mean, I just tried, I was just, all this time, I knew it wasn't going to work out for them. And then when Julian tried to touch Carrie, it was just like, he tried using Carrie and pretending to touch her. He was trying to do this to basically get Cathy to hate him because he knew that Cathy was going to leave him, so he was basically trying to get his revenge on Cathy, because that's what this movie's all about. It's all about revenge and different kinds of revenge. That's when everything just got crazy, because, he tried to touch Carrie, and Christopher just came on because he thought that, Julian was trying to sexually touch his sister. He beat the shit out of Julian, which honestly I knew that was coming because I knew Christopher was going to be upset, but it just mattered how much he cared about his sister, and when he beat up Julian, it was an amazing scene to watch. I thought that was just an awesome scene to watch, and I absolutely just love that scene. And then the scene where, I love the scene where, everything's going really bad. Julian and Cathy tells him that she's pregnant, and then he dies. I just thought that was awesome. I'm just like, because I was not expecting it at all. When she's like, I want you to live, and he's like, why do you care so much about me? Because she's like, well, I think I wanted my child to know who their father was, and then it was just like, car crash. I was just like, that is awesome. That is awesome right there. The other thing I gotta say is the writing in the second half of this movie got so much better. So much better. I loved it so much. And then, when it seemed like the second half, a lot of people were, engaged to get married, I feel so... And then when Carrie, never acknowledged her fling or anything, or whatever it was, with Julian... And, then we go, years later. Because the next movie's, years later. Cathy's now had her baby. She's now had the baby, Jory. And no one's talked about the whole thing with Carrie. And, Carrie's actually met someone. She's met this pastor. And, he was very in love with her. I was really thinking that was going to work out for her. But, the thing is, she didn't feel like she deserved anyone to love her. And it's really sad. She basically said, I don't deserve love. Because... she remembers all the bad times she's had in the attic. She remembers everything she's been through with her family. And now with Julian, she just feels like that she should not, she should not be in love. So the one thing that she had to do, I mean, I felt so bad for Carrie in this next part of the movie. The one thing that she had to do was go up to her mother and ask, she wants to look for answers. And she said, I want you to come to my wedding. And Corinne does just the most terrible thing that any, parent could do to their children. She says, oh, you must have some mistake. I don't have a daughter. And it's just like, fuck you, Corinne. Seriously. I mean, seriously, this mother is just, like, crazy. She just disowned her own daughter, and then because of that, she made her own daughter kill herself. Because Carrie hearing that, hearing her mother say, I don't have a daughter, and basically disowning her, and not even acknowledging her, made Carrie feel like shit. It really did, because it made her feel like my mother doesn't give two shits about me, nobody really cares much about me, I don't deserve happiness. She killed herself, and when she killed herself, I did not expect that to happen at all. Yes, I didn't expect Carrie to die actually at all in this movie. I thought she was going to make it out of this movie, but, you know, she didn't make it out, and I was just like, I was so surprised when that happened. I mean, it was so surprising, but I thought it was a really great moment when she did that. However, I was very surprised that she did not make it out of this movie, but that was such a great twist. As I said, I love the twist in this movie. However, the most devastating twist to me, and I felt really bad for this girl, was, yes, when Sarah found Christopher and Cathy, you know, well, before that, basically, the reason I love Cathy so much in the second half of this movie is because as soon as she finds out that the reason that Cathy killed herself was because their mother disowned her, and she sees the letters that her mother sent to her, which we don't even know what's on those letters, it was probably something like, I want nothing to do with you, go away, you're not my child anymore, I don't know who the hell you are, stop writing to me, probably something like that, because they didn't say what was on the letter specifically, but knowing how Corinne's character was, yeah, she probably writes something like that. So, you know, Cathy then wants to get her revenge. You know, she's tired of her mother beating them at her own game. She's tired of them calling them the devil's spawn. She's tired of them disowning them, so she decides to, you know, seduce her husband, Bart. And when they had sex, I was really surprised. And there was a lot of sex scenes in this movie, which, you know, I guess that's good because, you know, Rose Mcgeever is hot. But basically, I was so surprised when they had sex, actually. And then when she was going to use that pregnancy to make Corinne, you know, basically use that as the ultimate revenge, that was awesome. Because it's just like, the whole plan is he will leave her because Cathy's pregnant with his child. So, I mean, that's a really big thing. And then when they decided to, you know, crash that Christmas party, that was just fantastic. But before that had happened, the other thing I do have to say is I felt really bad for Sarah because Christopher was planning on marrying Sarah. He really was. He was planning on having an engagement with her. You know, he got engaged to her because her father comes up to him and he says, "Look, I really love Sarah. Sarah's a really great girl, and if you don't plan on marrying her, well, then I think you should just stop this altogether because she really likes you and she wants to marry you, just so you know. So if you don't plan on marrying her, then you have to stop this now." And that's what he decided to do. Christopher decided to get engaged to her. However, unfortunately, Sarah had to see Christopher and Cathy almost have sex. And that's where she was just like, I just felt so bad for this girl because all you had to tell her was, I was locked up in an attic, I had previous feelings for my sister, but now I don't like her anymore. That wouldn't, you know, that wouldn't make her creep it out or anything. All you have to say is that we were locked in an attic for 2 years, I had nowhere else to turn. I mean, yes, it's a very hard thing to say, but if this is really the girl you love, you could have just said that to her and everything would have been fine. But obviously, this is a movie, that's not going to happen, and I just felt really bad for her because Sarah honestly was one of my favorite characters. She was so nice to Cathy, so nice to Christopher. She was just such a sweetheart, and she had to die. And, I mean, not had to die, but she had to see the wrong thing, and I just felt so bad for her. And then my favorite moment of this movie is when Corinne and Bart are at the party, and they're like, who wants to talk about how they know Corinne? And, Cathy comes up and she says, I knew Corinne as this girl that locked us up in the attic for 2, and she tells everyone, and I love this, she tells everyone that Corinne locked them up in an attic for 2 years. It was awesome that she did this. And she's like, my mother locked us up in an attic for 2 years prior, you know, and basically, she realizes that killing them would be easier, and their grandmother even corrupted their story, like the vicious, their grandmother even corrupted their story, so, I mean, that was so big when she revealed to everyone, and then she said, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant with your, husband's child, so, yeah, there's really nothing you can do about it. So, Corinne, this destroyed Corinne, honestly. seeing this just made everything worse. And then when we found out that she did not bury Corey's body, and she had left Corey's body, you know, she left it in that room. I was just like, and then when they got back to the mansion, I was so happy that they got back to the mansion. I'm like, oh my god, they're back. This is where it's gonna get awesome. And when we found out that she left her own son's body in her room, I was just like, this woman is a psychopath. I mean, seriously, Corinne was a psychopath. I thought she was crazy in the first movie. She was a psychopath in this movie. She really was, because of what she did to her children. Things like that. What she made them go through was just like, you're really out of line, lady. Like, seriously. And basically, as this destroyed Corinne, we saw Christopher. She started going crazy, like Christopher was her former husband and uncle, so it was just crazy when he was pushing her away. And then when she set the family, also before that, Cathy and Olivia have that conversation that's really, really important, where she says, even if you kill me, the devil's spawn will find you. And the biggest thing is that, we kind of see that for the first time, Olivia actually, sympathizes. You sympathize with Olivia because you realize Corinne was even like this to her own mother, because Corinne goes to her mother, she sets the drapes on fire, she kills her mother, she sets the whole mansion on fire, Bart dies as well, and, I was really surprised by that happening. I was like, wow, she is like this to her own mother. She doesn't even care about her own mother. I cared about her mother in this movie because her mother is dying here, and you don't even want to get her help. You don't even want to get her help, the help you wanted. She just wanted to put her in a nursing home. That's what she cared about. That's what mattered to her, is putting her in a nursing home, because she had other problems in her life to deal with. Like, seriously, Corinne, such a terrible person in this movie. So Corinne, in the end, got what she deserves. She's put in a mental institution. However, I love the ending to this movie, because we see Christopher and Cathy, they've moved out west, and basically they have done what their mother did. They become the doppelgangers again, and just like their mother, they have 2 kids, and they're not telling them anything would happen about the attic or anything. So say that something bad happens to them. Say something bad happens, what's going to end up happening to them is that they are going to find out the truth just like they did in Flowers in the Attic. And the whole purpose of this movie is that Cathy does not want to become her mother. She wants to do everything she can to not become Corinne. And in this in the next movie, at the end of this movie, basically she's become as bad as Corinne, because they just lied to their children like their mother lied to them. And it's not as bad, because what their mother lied to them about was much worse. And I don't think Christopher's gonna die, because, Cathy and Christopher, they have a very strong relationship. I don't think he's gonna die or anything. However, they could go through the same thing all over again. And if they go through the same thing all over again, in the next movie, If There Be Thorns, I can't wait for the next movie, because the way this movie ended was just like, wow. And this is why this is such a great sequel. I mean, seriously, this was such a great sequel. As I said, so much great acting, so many great twists in this movie, and I absolutely love this movie. So, yeah, I know there were a lot of spoilers, guys, but I had to spoil a lot of this movie, because I had to talk about, because as I said, the second half of this movie was my favorite part of this movie, and they were all spoilers, so that's why there were a lot of spoilers in this. I know this wasn't the typical movie review, but honestly, this movie felt more like a TV episode to me, because it was a complete continuation of the first movie, and I just thought they did such a great job with it. I love this movie. I can't wait for the third one, If There Be Thorns. It's going to be amazing. As I said, the acting was great. The writing in this movie was just wow. The twists, the turns, everything was great. The directing was great, and I can't wait for the third movie. So that's it for my review of Petals on the Winds. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie. Who was the best actor and actress in this movie? Did you think that all the acting improved? I really did. I really thought everybody stepped it up in this movie, like 10 times more than they did in the last movie. I thought they did such a great job in this one. But that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next review, which will be for the new episode of 24 Live Another Day. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.